Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. And back for his regular visit is our Rockets expert, Frank from Rockets Chop Shop. Go to subscribe to his Rockets Chop Shop YouTube channel and check that out. Frank, it's one in a row for the Rockets. Is one in a row a win streak?
For us, we will take one in a row. I mean, we were on 13 in a row. And I mean, when I don't know if it was Calvin Murphy or whoever said on the broadcast that it had been 41 days since we'd had a home victory, that kind of just blew my mind. Even though, it's 13 games, but you forget that it's, games played every other day, sometimes 2 to 3 days in between. So we're looking at over a month of just losing. And for fans, for players, for coaches, for the guys that are calling the broadcast, I'm sure that this was a much, much, much needed victory to kind of get at least that little monkey off their back of not just going on this another historic losing streak again, if we're used to pretty much on an annual basis here in Houston.
You and I have to talk about how the offense has changed up a little bit, and I want to do that in a second. Just a quick reminder to subscribe and comment on YouTube. It's the best way to support the show. If you want to just listen in your car while you exercise or however, you can just find us on your favorite podcast app. But Frank, the story since Kevin Porter's been out of the lineup is the increased usage and minutes for Sengun. And I'll go back even further than since that period. In his last 9 games, so you can take it back 9 games now, Sengun averaging 19 points, 10.7 boards, and 6 assists while shooting 63.7% from the field in 33 minutes. We've been begging for him to get over 29 minutes a game. And in his last 4, he's averaging 24 points, 12 boards while shooting 72% in 37 minutes. Just to remind everybody, you and I suggested months ago that Sengun is their best player right now. Is the debate over?
I think if there's still a debate about the best player, but as far as the most important player at this point, it's not really debatable because he's the only person on the team that impacts the play of pretty much everybody else. We've seen Jalen have great games that doesn't really do anything for anybody else on the team because he's a scorer. We've seen Kevin Porter Jr. have great games, even games where he assists and scores a lot of points that doesn't really impact the team's overall performance. But Alperen is the one player on the team that plays a brand of basketball that you could see scale up to a winning program in the future. And to me, that makes him the most important piece on the team because the skill set he provides on both ends on the court. And one thing I was listening to Zach Lowe, and he pointed out, I think it was somebody from Oklahoma City on his last or 2 podcasts he had to go kind of criticizing Alperen's defense. And he made a great point, and this is a point that I've seen as late as last year, is that if you watch the games live, or if you're ever in person, you can hear Alperen on defense making all the calls for the guys, which tells you, and so what Zach pointed out was that he understands what the offense is trying to do. And I don't think that's really emphasized enough in his development, in that he has the eye to see what the other team's offense is trying to do. And he's still just a young guy. You could essentially say this is his first year starting, which really blows my mind that people want to cap his defensive ability at what they see now. When you have those guys with that level of IQ that are calling out plays before they're even ran, or telling, if you really watch the games, watch Alperen when he's in that drop, as that drop big, and he's making the calls for everybody. He's telling guys where to go. When you have that in a 20-year-old, to me, it's only a matter of time where he gets to the point where he can anticipate where exactly he needs to be on multiple types of offensive looks from the other team in order to be able to cut them off or even blow up their actions. So, it's honestly, this is a breath of fresh air to see. It gives us as a fan base something tangible to be happy about because the Jalen, I love Jalen Green, and obviously he's a talented player, probably the most talented player on the team. But the scoring 40 points, 2 times a month is not something we can say is a tangible thing that we can see going forward. What is tangible is what him and Alp do in a 2-man action. That I can get excited about. I can get excited about, running certain plays for certain guys on the teams, or even when we insert better talent, I can imagine what it would look like for them to be able to play through Alperen in the offense in the way they're looking right now. So yeah, it's definitely a little ray of light in this dark, dark, dark era of Rockets basketball right now.
Jalen Green's had a couple of 40-point performances recently. Do you feel like this is because of what Sengun is doing, or is Jalen just getting hot, which we haven't seen in a few months?
This is there's the stretch where he scored 30 or more points or 5 games or whatever it was towards the end of the season. At that point, they really let him play a lot more on ball. And I think that it's a combination of two things with him. Is definitely him getting his rhythm and getting his confidence. He's a rhythm scorer. He's a guy that needs to see a couple go in. And the best way for him to do that is to when he's coming off of screens and dribble handoffs with Alperen. And this was the same thing last year. And I think the combination of him getting so many reps at it, you can see them. There's clips from the game of him and Alperen talking on the sidelines, being very demonstrative about what they're trying to say and maybe making adjustments with each other about what they want to see. And once again, I made my video about the second game against the Timberwolves. Not to, people, it does beg some questions about the fit with KPJ. And to me, it's not really a matter of fit as far as him as an NBA player. It's a matter of fit is what the Rockets are asking these guys to play like currently. And all these things that we're seeing, these experiments, these conversations Jalen and Alpi are figuring out on the court together, off the court together, these adjustments they're making, these things, these data points they're picking up in their game. These are things we could have learned last year. And that's always been my gripe with the team is that you've put so much stock into this backcourt that you have literally hamstrung yourself on other options or other outcomes with the team. If you had maybe embraced playing through what Alp was flashing literally last year, if you leaned into that a bit harder, how much further along would Jalen and Alperen be in their two-man combo? And then leading into a next season where you want to be competitive, how much further along would the team be? The players that play off ball, how much better would that be for Jabari Smith, who's a dependent player, where he's in an offense where he's getting some great looks on in the flow of the offense instead of trying to create for himself or getting late shots, late kickouts on bailout ISOs. So it's all kind of wrapped together in some of to me, the most incredibly damning thing that the Rockets have done throughout, to me, this past 2.5 years is really failed to accomplish multiple tasks at the same time, which is being tanking, whatever you want to call it, and also putting out a system that maximizes all their players simultaneously instead of focusing on the development of two guys at the expense of other players.
Yeah, and what I hear from you and what I've heard from Jackson Gatlin with Locked On Rockets and Ben Dubose is that the frustrating thing with what the Rockets have done over the last couple of years is you've had a chance for basically 2 years to experiment with the guys that you have out there and try different things. And the Rockets just continue to do the same thing most of that time, most of the year and a half until recently. There isn't a whole lot of experimenting. It's just they're doing the same thing over and over again. And this is the perfect time to experiment with these guys and see what they do best.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. And, saying all I just said is not too late for them. They have 30 something games left. I need to see what Kevin Porter looks like as a wing. I need to see what he looks like playing a reduced role in the offense, because what you want at this point in the season is to get data points that are going to help you make easier decisions, because you have a lot of hard decisions coming up as a Rockets franchise. You have the cap space that you're going to have to spend and make decisions. Who do you want to give your money to? You have a lot of these guys that are rookie first round picks that we've drafted, 7 of them so far. You're possibly adding 2 more. Defining what the roles of our players long term or even in the short long term really helps you make decisions on whether you do need to draft another guy or what type of free agent or trade do we need to make to improve the team. Because if they are so dead set on the Kevin Porter thing, like once again, you're limiting your outcomes. in that, because then the team that you're going to build going forward is going to be determined by that. And I just feel like that's such a myopic way to look at this, all the talent that you have on the roster. We still don't know who a lot of these guys are. I don't know what, for example, a guy like Jabari, he's still just an afterthought to me in the offense because we don't have that point guard that's able to use him to the fullness of his abilities. We still don't know about guys like Ty Ty that are later on in the draft that have been bouncing around between the G League and the Rockets bench because they're not willing to move on from an Eric Gordon and start. So the rest of this season, ideally, because they're running out of runway to be a tanking team, to be the worst team in the league, experiment. All the lineups that you want to see, all the different variations of teams that you possibly could be. Lean into Alperen, lean into Jalen. Hell, even give Jabari a second unit where he's a focal point. This is the time to do it. This is the time they could have made a lot of different things. And one of the things that I'm really disappointed in, I kind of want to hear your thought on this, is how passive the Rockets have been in the free agency and trade market for a team that's a tanking team. As you were talking about taking swings with the roster construction and playing time, they could have taken swings on players throughout these past 2.5 years. I feel like there are a lot of players that have been moved around in the NBA that we could have taken flyers on. And it seems like they're just okay with just staying with the guys we have, even though we're not playing them. But, you think about guys like Cam Reddish and the Bobos of the world, these young guys that have potentially high upside. To me, if you're a bad team, hey, with nothing to lose, those are the times you bring in those type of talents and see if they can become value in the future. And I just feel like it makes no sense for us to keep all these picks that we've drafted, have all these fringe NBA players and not play them. And then we're going to get to a point where we're basically just going to move on from them. So it's just, to me, just overall asset mismanagement.
It's funny you should say that, because I've had the same issue with the Texans, because over the last couple of years, they went after some washed up guy, not washed up, but guys that just, had been mediocre and didn't show a whole lot of upside on other teams. They went after those kind of veterans. And you could say, well, maybe they needed a new lease on life. But with the Texans, you just wanted them to take some swings at some free agents and guys that, hadn't been given their chance, some young guys that were undrafted, or, you might find that Arian Foster like you did before, or somebody of that ilk. And, you just never know what you could find out there that nobody's using, whether it's on a, somebody's using that on a backup roster or whatever. And I feel like the Rockets got married to their own guys, the guys in their own G League, as opposed to going out and maybe searching for and bringing in some other guys from the G League. Now, Anthony Lamb is interesting because he was somebody that they gave multiple chances to. And you and I had a conversation offline at one point going, what in the world? Anthony Lamb is already becoming a big deal in Golden State. So maybe they've taken good chances in the guys that they brought in. They just didn't know what to do with. But Anthony Lamb, I think, also wasn't as in shape as he was or has been with Golden State this year either. So he's lost some weight and he looks like a different guy just physically.
I mean, it lends to two things, and we saw the same phenomena with Christian Wood. Lack of structure and accountability really goes a long way in evaluating talent. And I'm glad you pointed out that aspect, because why didn't we demand Anthony Lamb lose weight? And why didn't we demand that? And why don't we have the structures to make guys that aren't, all world talents play well to a certain extent? And you can the thing that also makes you ask is, then how can we clearly evaluate the guys that we have on the roster right now if the structure they're in doesn't really bring out the best in them on a consistent basis, because it's not demanding the best. You see Christian Wood in Dallas. Hell, when we played him, he had you would thought it was Dwight Howard out there. The way he was trying to play defense. And the thing with guys, I've never criticized a player for being a bad defender. I hate when players don't try. Effort goes a long way. Steph Curry is the perfect example of that. Steph Curry just physically is not a great defender, but I mean, this dude is like Mr. Try Hard. He goes hard all the time, trying to play defense, and within the context of a team defense, trying hard makes the biggest difference in the world. So Christian Wood tries hard in Dallas, even though he still gets beat, but he's trying. In Houston, he didn't care, just like we just saw Jalen go through a 15-game stretch of not caring about playing defense to know not a blip from the coach. We see Sengun gets criticized if he has a bad turnover or, he has a stretch here where he gets beat, he gets benched. But we don't see that same accountability to Jalen or Kevin Porter or some of the other guys on the team. So once again, questions of the talent on the roster, how does it fit going forward? Do they have the cojones to be able to tell a KPJ that, hey, brother, we see what we like right now. We're going to try this. We want you to do X, Y, and Z. We want you to play. We're going to put you in Eric's role, and you're going to be off ball. So here you're going to be mostly in the corners. Be ready to shoot. If we'll try to get you your touches on the second unit as far as with the point guard. Is he going to be okay with that? And if he's not okay with that, the Rockets ready to deal with the consequences from that. That takes leadership, and that takes some conviction about what you're trying to do. I'm not sure if we're going to see that. It's going to be very telling for me because I know you've seen the clip today of Sarge asking Steven Silas about playing through Alpine. He said possibly with the most angriest look on his face, like, how dare you ask me this question? But it'll be telling for me when Kevin Porter comes back, what the balance is on offense. If it's more of the same, like of heavy ISO, him slowing down the pace and kind of determining everything, it really tells me pretty much that honestly, I may not have any hope for the front office and the coaching staff at all. If they can pull this little thing off where they can balance out what we're seeing when Alpe's playing, what is done for the offense, for Jalen, for some of the other players, and have Kevin Porter be acceptable to that, then I may have a little hope in them being able to make some harder decisions.
There's accountability for the Rockets if you're Sengun or if you're Josh Christopher, but there's no accountability if you're Daishen Nix or Jalen Green or Kevin Porter or on and on and on. And we've seen it over and over again. I want to ask you because this is interesting. If Sengun is their best player, or you said most important player, I want you to look into your crystal ball 1 year from now. There's a likely new coach, we hope, and a couple new faces on the team. But of the young guys on the current roster, so we'll exclude the new lottery pick, whoever that is, rank your top 5 Rockets players in order. The 6 likely candidates, of course, Jalen, Jabari, Sengun, KPJ, Kenyon, and Tari.
Okay, so I'm going to rank them based on what impact I think they're going to have on winning. I think number 1 is going to be Jalen Green. To me, Sengun stirs the drink, but Jalen is the drink. If the Rockets are going to do anything as far as be able to take that next level, he has to hit as one of those primary guys. And the comp I always use for the relationship between Sengun and the entire roster, and Jalen in particular, is Draymond on the Warriors and Steph. Draymond, the year they won the championship, that was the year that Steve Kerr came into that organization. The year prior with Mark Jackson, they were a decent team, playoff team, a first-round exit. Draymond only touched the ball. He had 16 touches per game. Steve Kerr came in, saw what he saw, said, this guy's a talented post passer. I'm going to run everything through him. And Draymond led their team in front court touches the next probably 7 years, peaking at 40-something in the front court alone, which is just a crazy high number. And the more Draymond touched the ball, the more Curry improved, and in his MVP season where he won the unanimous MVP, Draymond averaged 9 more touches than Steph, while Steph was averaging 30 points on the 40, 50, 90 club that he started, being one of the most efficient players in the NBA. I say all that to say, when ranking these players, you still need Steph is still Golden State's guy, but Draymond is probably the most important player there. If there's no Draymond, there's no dynasty. Sengun is going to be the Draymond role. He's going to be my most important, but Jalen is going to be my number 1 because I think he is the one that brings it all together. If Draymond was out there with Ty Washington, I don't think you win any championships. So we have Jalen number 1. I think Sengun is number 2. I think he also adds an element on offense that he could also be a scorer. And we've seen, as you pointed out, his averages throughout these past few games. I mean, the dude's a walking 2010. on any type of 30-minute. If he gets 30 minutes a game, even on a bad night, like the performance he had against Minnesota was underwhelming, and he still had 21, 7, and 7. It wasn't like he was just doing anything spectacular. He was 8 for 12, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, a lot of turnovers, but a lot of them were dumb traveling calls. But yeah, so that's his baseline. His baseline is like 20 and 10. So I think that could improve. The third on my list, depending on who's here, it's going to be between Jabari and Kevin Porter Jr. I want there to be a world where Kevin Porter's talents are tapped into, and I hope that whoever they bring in as a coach has the cachet and the structure to be able to maximize KPJ. Like, y'all listen to me, KPJ is a talented basketball player, and it takes a special type of leader to be able to get through to those type of guys that are kind of stuck in their ways to make them fit into the construct of a team. And if you can do that, then you basically unlock new levels of talent on your team. If the coach comes in and allows him to buy in, I think he has to be third at this moment in time, because I think he brings a lot to the table with his size, his frame, his skill set, his shooting. It's just for him, everything is mental and accountability. If they can do that, then I think that he is going to be that a leader on the team, a guy that can close out a lot of the games. He's a bigger guard. He can guard bigger guards. I think that's important. Then fourth, there is going to be Jabari. I still think Jabari is a couple years away from really being impactful as far as lending to just overall winning. I know he's going to have a big leap this coming summer, but his issues are going to be really strength-based. As a 19-year-old, there's only so much you could do in the position where you're banging against bigger guys. I think give him a couple years. Honestly, he probably has the highest physical upside of everybody on the roster. Jabari does, but we'll see where he's at in a few years. And then last on that list, the fifth spot, just based on the young core, I will probably have to give that to Kenya Martin Jr. And I'm not going to say Tari just yet. Tari is in a KPJ role for me, meaning that he also needs a coach that can kind of refine him more. I love what he does. I know you love Tari as a prospect. I do as well. I think that his impact is going to be felt a couple years from now, too, when we're in those playoff situations. I think him and Jabari in the future as a duo on defense is going to be scary for the league. And that's something I'm seeing. And the team may not even look the same, but Jabari and Tari as a wing duo is going to be something. Y'all just mark my words on that. But I think KJ as a veteran, this dude has said all the right things throughout this season. Every quote that you need for every situation, he's said all the things you need to hear. I think he is a steadying force on the team. I think he's a leader. I think he's a guy that keeps the ball moving. I think he's a decent defender, decent to good defender. He adds a lot of different elements, and he's just a high IQ player, and I think we need that next year as we're trying to win. So those are my top five. It's going to be Jalen, Sengun, Kevin Porter, Jabari, and KJ.
Yeah, I think Jabari could quickly move up next year. The thing that is the X factor for him is if he just starts hitting his jump shots. And we've talked about him not getting the shots maybe where he should be getting shots at, or him knowing where he's getting his shots from. If you brought in a new coach and he started getting shots where he knew he was getting from them, and he starts making the shots that he should be able to make. I mean, it's just baffling to me. It's, I figured there would be a little bit of a curve trying to get him up to NBA 3-point range, especially, those 3-pointers that are out at the angle up high. But I didn't feel like it was going to be at all a stretch for him to be an incredible mid-range jump shooter in the NBA right off the bat. I mean, that's what he was doing in college. And, those would be shorter shots than 3-point range in the NCAA. And I just think that when I factor in his defense and what he brings to the table there and how far behind and how pathetic Jalen Green's defense is right now and where Jabari's is already, if he takes a jump and he gets into the weight room and the shots start falling down and you get a new coach, you could see a major jump. And let me tell you, Frank, if he starts hitting jump shots, he can get points whenever, wherever. Jalen has to work his tail off, and he still can't figure out how to, maybe make those a little bit easier. And he's not good on creating jump shots and making those jump shots that he creates. He's still not good at anything where he's got to take a couple of bounces and pull up. Whereas once I think it happens for Jabari, and I just have to think it will, then you can't stop him because there's nobody that is going to be able to block that shot. So he's going to have easy shots that Jalen just doesn't get. Jalen's got to have to work way harder for those. And defensively, there's no way Jalen's ever going to get to the defense of Jabari because of Jabari's height and length and, the things that he has physically that Jalen just doesn't. So if he makes a jump next year and, you hope that he will, you could really see Jalen moving up. And, I don't know if Sengun doesn't have another jump to make, with an offseason where he's not playing Euro ball and he gets in the gym and really builds up. And the thing is, Frank, we're starting to see things he's incorporating that we haven't seen before. He's starting to hit those mid-range jumpers and the three-point shot is looking smoother. And oh my goodness, like if that stuff starts happening more frequently and he gets more confident in all that, and he doesn't have a coaching staff that I'm wondering if they're limiting him taking the three-point shots and they just allow him to do that whenever he wants to, you could see, him get even better, even make a bigger jump. And he has made the biggest jump of all the young guys this year by far.
Yeah, he definitely has, and I'm gonna touch on the Jabari point. Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I don't think Jabari would make that huge of a leap because he still has also a lot on his defense, adjusting to the NBA schemes and things like that. Now, obviously, when it comes to just raw effort and being the physical tools to play good defense, especially on the perimeter, I think he's probably our best. He might be the best perimeter defender right now on the team. Honestly, just based on his physical profile and the ability that he gives on that end. I just think that his game is such it requires so much technique to be what he needs to be, especially scoring from that mid to high post, where his footwork is going to have to improve dramatically. You see a lot of times when he takes those jumpers, he's letting smaller players really get under him, and he has to take these exaggerated fadeaways where he's like, dude, you're 6'11", you don't have to do that. But that's because he doesn't really have the requisite footwork yet. So for him, getting in the gym, working on his strength, as you pointed out, working on just his basketball game, being comfortable putting the ball on the ground, as he's showing flashes of, being comfortable taking balanced shots, having multiple different tools at your disposal, whether it's a turnaround or a fadeaway or a hook shot or floater, different things that you can do in the paint. I think he's going to have more time to experiment with that next year as well. I really see his jump coming the year after next. But like you, I believe that he has the highest upside on the team. I mean, this dude has the potential to be a two-way star. I can't say that about Jalen or Sengun. Even as good as they are, Jabari can be a guy that averages 20-some points a game and is your best defender on the team. And to me, what that sounds like is a guy that can lead a team to a championship. And so that's very important to keep an eye on. On Sengun, yeah, I mean, to me, people are looking at a 20-year-old and are comparing him to all these old guys like Jokic and Sabonis, and not remembering that these dudes came in much later, 22, 21 years old, and he came in at 19 years old. So they have a 2-year head start on their rookie and sophomore seasons than he did, and he's already, so to me, surpassed Sabonis on the development track. And Jokic at 21 or 22 years old is what he's being tracked with right now. I want to see Sengun at 22. When he's 22, that's 2 more summers in the weight room. People are acting like the dude's body isn't going to change like everybody else's body does. You look at a lot of these guys when they come in as rookies. Hell, go look at Sabonis as a rookie. The dude was just skinny and like with no muscle definition. And you could see how he's built up his body over the years. And the invert for Jokic came in chubby. And over the years, he's leaned out. Not, the greatest looking athlete in the world, but at least you can tell that he's really taking pride in getting his body ready to be the MVP that he is. So I'm going to grant Alp the same assumption I'm giving to Jabari and Jalen, that physically he's going to turn from a child to a man. The dude, like Rob, you remember when you were 19? There's a difference in your body when you're 19 and when you're 25 years old, and you're a grown man or growing into being a man. So
not me, unfortunately, there wasn't a difference.
Your body's the same. But assuming a regular human being, their growth patterns, Alp is going to be fine. I think physically he's going to develop. Like we talked about the defense and the IQ, he's going to know where to be. He's going to get stronger. He's already punishing grown men. We see him night after night putting these centers under the basket, big and small and tall. However they come, he punishes them. How does him getting to lift weights for 2-3 more summers not impact that? So I think he has a lead. There's so much to his game he can add. I see the little shot put floaters he's doing. I want to see a consistent mid-range jumper, because that's going to really, for those Rudy Goberts that like to camp in the paint, when him and Jalen or whoever the guard is get into that pick and roll action where he could just pop out and just punish them for sagging off trying to stop the rim attack. That opens up another world. And when you get into, him being able to shoot, it opens up another playmaking world of drawing out defenders and having our guys cut behind that. So I'm not sure where the coaching staff is or the front office is on Sengun. Honestly, he's the best thing they have going, because what he brings to the table is attractive to other players. We've heard multiple NBA players, Anthony Edwards multiple times now, praise Sengun. Anthony Edwards said that they had to game plan for Sengun, I think 3 games ago when we played him, that the team, their job was to stop him. They came out the last game. He said that dude is really, really good. You've seen him embracing him after the game, this last game that we had. We've heard players, Batum, the MVP himself, Jokic, just people around the league just speak on it. And the national media now has caught wind of his game, and the comparisons are going crazy with the all the guys that they think he could be or could not be. The Rockets would be almost borderline idiotic for them to look at this and say, "No, we're good. We're just going to keep, doing what we're doing." So the pressure is on them. I'm sure they didn't want this to be the outcome that they wanted. The way it's looking like, it seems like they're being forced and almost shamed into being competent, and I love it. So we're going to see. I think what comes out with Kevin Porter and how the season ends is going to be telling for me. I'm putting a lot on this trade deadline with Eric Gordon and that situation, and them trying to at least bring some players in that can help them prepare for next year as they're still losing, and then how they play going forward and some of the roster decisions.
All right. Yeah, I'm not expecting much from the Eric Gordon trade deadline. I figure we're just going to keep him for the next 10 years, and he's going to not only retire a Rocket, but he's going to move up to our evaluator when he's done. But yeah, there's a 72.6% chance the Rockets don't land Scoot Henderson or Wemby. But just out of curiosity, Frank, if they did land one of them, and I know I've talked to you a little bit about this, I'm interested. Who impacts the Rockets win total more next year, not down the road, Scoot or Wemby?
I would say Wemby, and this is really a flip for me, because I would say my brain was poisoned by the basketball I was seeing with the team. I was like, man, we need a guard really, really bad. But to me, the combination of Alperen and a ball handler makes a playmaker. And to me, you could have that as your offense, and then just have a serviceable point guard as your backup to facilitate in the non-Sengun minutes or non-Sengun and whoever minutes. I think Scoot is going to be a great player, but at the end of the day, if he's still a small guard, and it's really hard for me to see a small guard impacting winning off the jump. He's a rookie. He's young. He's going to have to learn the NBA. Teams are going to pick on him. They're going to switch out on him and force him to guard bigger players. I don't see that as an effective method. Now, Victor, on the other hand, the reason I think he's not a perfect fit either. And I think people are a bit, in my evaluation, I think they're too high on Wembanyama as like this fix-it-all prospect. I think he's going to have holes in his game at the NBA level, particularly strength. And I think we're going to see that. You're going to see he's going to get exploited in that until he catches up in a few years. But what he brings to me is a complementary piece to our front court with Alperen and Jabari, because he can play. I would put, people are saying putting him at the 3 and I would put Alperen is still my 5. He's the 5 because I want him in the center making those calls. As I pointed out before, he's probably the smartest guy on the team. I want that guy to navigate all the talented pieces around him. I don't want Wemby at the 3 like I've heard, because that's dumb. Why would you put a guy that has one of potentially be one of the greatest rim protectors on the perimeter? I would put him at the 4 and have him free roam and be that weak side help. And anything that gets by Alperen, Victor clean it up, and that's his job. And if we got to give up a 3 for that, I'll trust Jabari and the other and Tari to rotate and use their length to be able to cover up for that. And that's the vision that I see if we're blessed enough to get Victor Wembanyama. So I think in that scenario, you're supplementing for a weakness of Alperen in that rim protection. At the same time, you're getting all-world talent that could also be a part of a potent offense. And if we did land Wemby, I'm shifting. If I was the Rockets, I'm shifting everything to a front court. I'm going old school. Twin towers, triplet towers with Jabari, if you want to call it that. We're building around the front court, 2 big men that are dynamic on different aspects of the game, and I'm leaning fully into that. And Jalen and whoever else can just be along for the ride as some championship pieces. But yeah, if you get a Wemby and Alperen Sengun, it'll be unfair for the NBA, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like if Scoot comes in, your offense gets affected way more. And if Wemby comes in, it's your defense. Now, this is in a vacuum because we assume they're going to go out and try to add veterans at other positions. And without knowing which veterans you would add, depending on who you got among those 2 guys. And like I said, I think there's still a 70+% chance. I mean, there is a 70+% chance you're not getting those guys. So don't count on it. But I'm just saying, if it happens, it's an interesting, thought prospect of, which guy's going to make or could make more impact.
Yeah. What I would hate is, let's say we did get Wembanyama. Like, if we have, if like, that's why I'm putting so much on this last stretch of games. If we had a talent like that, are we going to be that rigid that we're still going to let him be a rim runner for Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green and have him just catch lobs and stuff like that? If that was the case, I think the NBA should sanction the Rockets and just take away the franchise from us. Because if you land Wemby and you're not going to use him to the fullest of his capabilities, then I just don't see why we should even have a basketball franchise. Now, maybe it's that they're low on Alperen, so they're not ready to lean into him fully, like they would if they had a Wemby. Maybe that's the case, and maybe that makes sense for them in right now. But to me, you have to show more flexibility and being able to maximize your talent. One of the things that,
but Frank, if they don't do Wemby right, he will speak up. His English is great. It is not like Sengun, who is still trying to learn English. You will hear him speak. And Jalen, he stands quietly in the corner a lot. He's not vocal. If you tell Wemby, this is how we're going to play you, and he doesn't like it, unlike those other guys, he's going to speak and he's going to have cachet because he's coming in with all the frills and all the excitement, and he knows who he is. So I don't think they could get away with it, and they would know that.
I think they would, if he came, they would have to almost clean house, like, because to me, I don't think Steven Silas is the coach that you want to pair up with a Wembanyama. Like, I would almost automatically have to go get a veteran coach that has coached star players before, because that's a recipe for disaster to having what we're doing now with a talent like that. Because the spotlight that the NBA is going to place on us, I don't think is going to be bearable for anything. I mean, they're going to have to. I mean, can you imagine if we were another bottom like 3 team again next year for the 4th year in a row with the Victor Wembanyama on the roster? With basically, you would have 3 top 3 picks on your roster. This is uncharted waters that we're about to get into, Rockets fans. Historically, usually Jabari and Jalen are enough to get you out the gutters. That's just NBA history. You get 2 of those guys, you're ready to roll. People always want to cite the process as the standard of that with what we're doing with the Sixers. When Joel Embiid came into the game, they were winning, and the fact that he was hurt was the reason that process was extended. So to me, either one, Jalen and Jabari are going to be bust, and that's why that we can still be a bad team going forward, or 2, our development process is just broken and we're actually failing these players. So either one, that's not a great option. But this season it is what it is, and we understand the mission at hand. If they do get a Victor Wembanyama, like, you can't afford to be incompetent, because if they are, then I think this franchise really has no hope, because top three picks in 3 consecutive years is literally never. I don't think that's ever happened in the NBA history from a team that remains bottom five. So, and this, it goes back to, like, what are we doing to prepare for that world where we want to be good again? And that's where I kind of get lost in the translate. Like, what's ahead, what the task is going to be at hand, but you've set yourself up in such a way that you have to do this Herculean, like, transformation as a franchise in order to not look like the worst thing ever. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a real interesting rest of season, summer, free agency, preseason, and next year is going to be just crazy. And I'm ready for it.
I want to just connect what we just talked about to this question, because this is a big one. Unless the Rockets land a top 4 lottery pick next year, they're handing their 2024 first round pick to the Thunder, as the fans know, which begs the question: do you see any realistic scenario where the Rockets make the playoffs next year? And this could be a 5-second no, Frank, from you, but just so people understand what I'm saying, not just the play-in game, but the playoffs, because if you don't make the playoffs, it might mean you're just handing that lottery. You are handing that lottery pick to the Thunder, and you might need to win. I'm going to put it at maybe 30 more games next year. 30 more games, Frank.
No, I'm going to keep it. Yeah, I don't think we can make the playoffs. We haven't shown the progression that you want to see. I like what I'm seeing from Orlando. I don't care if they end up with the same record as us. As a basketball watcher and somebody that really takes pride in understanding the game, we haven't shown the seeds of a team that's ready to compete at that level. So no, I don't think so. I think that we might as well just, that pick is gone. That's where I'm at. That pick is gone. So you might as well just, the Rockets might as well just assume the pick is gone and just start planning around being maybe a bottom 8 team next year instead of a bottom 3. That'll be progression for us. I think this rebuild is going to go on for a couple more years before we can see the fruits of it, which is okay. But they could have done better. They could have done much better.
And let me just tell people out there that are thinking, well, we're going to get Wemby and then we're getting James Harden and then it's all fixed. And, James is going to do his usual thing. James is not the old James. James is going to carry in terrible defense. You're now going to have a James Harden, Jalen Green defensive backcourt with a bunch of guys, and Sengun, who's not a good defensive player, and Wemby, who's a rookie center. And as good as you think Wemby's going to be, there ain't rookie centers that come in and just all of a sudden start playing incredible defense and just, making up for 3 terrible guys that you're going to have out there defensively. And I don't mean to be mean to Sengun. I mean, he's not terrible, but I'm just saying you're going to have 3 below average guys. 2 of them, I think, are just flat out bad. And all that's going to happen with Wemby in the middle, and that's going to change everything. I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, to me, we watch, like, Rudy Gobert is a 3-time defensive player of the year, and he gets exploited. Wemby will get exploited. I mean, it doesn't matter how tall you are in the NBA. He's like, I think people are really, really. I love his overall talent, and I think he's a transformational player. But the takes I've seen on Wemby are just crazy to me. Like, you are coming into the NBA against a bunch of great athletes, and he's going to have to adjust. And teams and coaches are going to find ways to exploit his weaknesses. So I don't think he's a fix-all. I think he needs to be developed like Jabari and Jalen and Cade and all these young guys that come into NBA are going to be like. And yeah, so no, I don't see us making the playoffs. I don't think there's enough talent on our roster to replace a team that is already on the path to being a playoff. I don't think we're going to be better than the Pelicans or OKC or Denver or Golden State, or any of the Clippers. Go on and on and on for the top, 9, 10, 11 teams on there. In order to make the playoffs, you have to replace somebody. And we just don't have the guys to do it right now. And I think we're a couple years away, maybe 2 years. I think after, not this coming season, the one after that is the year we're going to see the leap for the team into being a quasi contender. That's my vision.
The only thing that may change it is if you consolidate and you trade a couple of your young guys that might have huge potential, but you go for a sure thing vet with those guys. And that's the only way you do it. And that would mean you're landing a Scoot or a Wemby or something like that. You consolidate a couple of guys, you pick up a James Harden type veteran or something like that, then maybe you could do it. But I mean, you're going to have a lot of bounces and a lot of breaks.
Yeah, and they would have to clear out the half the roster. I mean, those waste us the Boban spots, the Garrison Matthews spots, the Knicks spots of the world, the Garuba spots, the Jacob, all that. If you want to make the playoffs, you probably replace them with vets. I mean, you're gonna need about probably trade move away from about 6 to 8 guys, in my opinion, 6 guys at least, just to replace with serviceable NBA players that can keep your offense and defense floating while the starters are out. So to me at this point, the OKC picks, it's gone. You might as well take the loss, egg on your face, and just move on and just keep the rebuild and hopefully try to make some smart moves and progress onward with these young guys and try to consolidate some of the later peripheral players to bring in more supplemental players to help the core pieces that you think are going to be your stars.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that bad where you got to get rid of some of those guys are just going to be off just by numbers. But I feel like you add a Wemby and then you add a couple of veterans. All of a sudden, your bench is guys like Kenyon Martin, Jayshawn Tate, Tari Eason. You have a lot of good role players on this team as it stands that could come off the bench. So you might be 8 or 9 deep. I'm not saying those guys are ready to battle for a championship, but they might be able to win you a bunch more games with them being off the bench as opposed to starters. And then you're getting rid of some of that. You're not playing that, that bottom trash that the Rockets have been forced to play a lot. The Garubas and the Knickses and the Ties and the Garrison Matthews and all of those guys. Those guys get cleared out a little bit when you add in more players. The more good players that you have in your rotation and the less bad players that you have in your rotation, it's just what happens. Like you get quality in every spot in the rotation. All of a sudden, a lot of stuff gets cleaned up. You see it all the time.
Yep, and it'll just be based on who they get. I just think that we have a lot of low impact players, but those roster spots that are given to like the Knickses and whatnot, yeah, those could easily be replaced with actual NBA players, and that could be able to come in and make an impact, whether starting or off the bench. And even some of the guys we love, if you're going to build a playoff team, maybe Garuba doesn't see any minutes at all because he's just not that good, or maybe guys like Tate or KJ see limited minutes because they're just not that good compared to some of the higher end talent you could bring in. And I'm open to that because that's how the NBA is. It's a good exercise to see is where our guys fit in around the league. If you ask yourself, would this player, kind of minutes would they get like on Boston or in Miami or somewhere like that? Well, maybe not Miami. They play everybody. But some of the teams that are contenders, what type of minutes would a Garuba get in Boston? What type of minutes would Garuba get if he was playing like in Denver or somewhere like that? And to me, I just don't see them as getting any at all. So that's why I meant by just kind of moving on from them.
Yeah, and if you get a Wemby and a Harden and you add one more vet into the rotation, we're talking about moving Kevin Porter to the bench. We're talking about maybe Jabari is on the bench. It could be some really good talent coming off the bench at that point. And those guys have to make a step. Still, just being a 15, 20 minute a guy if you're going to be a playoff team. But yeah, all of a sudden it changes a lot of different things if you get players that are better than them and you push all of these guys that we have either middling starters or bench guys that are our high end bench guys. All of a sudden they're getting 15, 20 minutes a night. It makes a big difference.
And none of our rookies deserve to start just because the reason they're starting because our team is just horrible. And if this was Golden State, and they would just be like Kuminga, you would play every other 5 games. Kuminga is just as high, he's a top 10 pick and he gets to play barely because he's on the Warriors, and it makes sense. If we had a Hall of Fame players on our court, then yeah, Jalen should probably come off the bench, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm okay with if you get better players, then nobody should raise an eye at if Jabari has to come off the bench, because on a regular team that's really trying to win games, he probably doesn't see that many minutes.
You still have all those Nets picks too. If you land
Yeah.
one of the big fish, you can flip that for something. I don't know what it's going to be worth because the Nets continue not to make that drop that the Rockets were hoping. But you have those picks to trade, even though you don't have your own picks to trade for the next 3 years.
Yep, and yeah, those net picks. There's a chance they turn into nothing because, as we're seeing, the Nets are competent. They actually fixed their situation, which sucks for us. The swap next year is useless. So you're looking at 2 more swaps, and I think 2 more picks after that. And depending on how KD and Kyrie age out, and if they do leave, what they get back from there, those may also just be maybe late or mid lottery. Maybe picks in the teens, and then it begs the question: is that what James Harden was worth?
Well, you want to
So
get rid of them now because
yeah,
if you
I
don't get
agree.
rid of them now, they lose value with every year you wait and you
Yeah,
don't move them.
the close every year we get closer to them, they're more defined, and if they're more defined assets, then the value will go down. I think the uncertainty or whatever the word is, of uncertainty of what they are is part of the value in them, because there's the chances of the Nets just being a bottom team, and you'll be like a situation where you are with the Clippers and OKC right now, where I've heard rumors of them blowing up and OKC is just waiting on them. But if we find out like, oh, KD's there for the long haul, Kyrie's there, and maybe they get lucky and a guy that wants to win a ring goes there and they do this next year. And yeah, those picks start looking terrible. So I would cash in at least, if not all of them, some of them to move up. My thing is that if we don't get a top 3 pick, I think we should trade out of that pick, and maybe package it with some of the future picks and try to go big fish hunting, like Daryl Morey would say. So we'll see what they do with that. I don't think we need to add another guy to the team that we need to develop for another 3 or 4 years. It's just we have so many of those guys on the roster already. I think they need to start trying to define who their core piece is going to be. Not the pieces, but that who's our SGA. And I'm not sure if we have that player on the team right now. I know I'm really high on Jalen Green, but he's a 2 guard, and that position really takes a couple of years before it impacts winning in a serious way. And if he's not going to be a 2-way player, he's never going to really fully impact winning as much as we want him to. If he's just a scorer, then that's so limiting as a star player to just be a bucket. Unless he's going to be one of the most efficient and greatest scorers in history or in this modern era, just being able to score buckets. You have guys that could do that all around the league. His defense is going to be very important. If he can raise up to that level where he's a 2-way player, then we're talking. But until then, I still think they need to define who the alpha is on the team, that's going to be the guy that is going to kind of take them to that next level. Maybe it's Wemby. Maybe we get him in Scoot Henderson. Maybe it's where we draft. Maybe it's a free agent that we pick up or a trade. But I still think we're searching. Maybe it is Jalen. Maybe it's Alperen. We just don't know yet, though. And for a team that's trying to contend and take that next leap to the playoffs, it's almost prerequisite you have to define that. The Memphis did it with John Morant. The Golden State with Steph. It's SGA is, you're seeing it right now happening with him. Paolo is going to be that guy for Orlando. Detroit hopes it's Cade, but you need to kind of know that guy so you can build a roster around them and facilitate everything to fit their needs so they can help you win a championship. And I feel like we haven't reached that point yet, and a lot of the fault is on ours because we've been kind of catering to the KPJ and Jalen backcourt.
What's the latest on Rockets Chop Shop? You got any new videos?
Yeah, I just dropped the video on the game, the second Timberwolves game, just kind of showing how Jalen's and Alpe's chemistry is really impacting, his development, the scoring output that he had. It's a lot of it. Those buckets were off of Sengun screens and actions that they ran together. So they really work well. So you guys can check out that video. It's called Jalen Green drops 42 and Rockets win. So check it out. It's a great breakdown. I've been doing those breakdowns in a while, so you can hit up the channel and subscribe. And we do the post game live streams and everything else in between.
All right, I'm gonna get you out of here. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next week.
Appreciate you, man. It's a fun conversation.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.